Chris.
Yes.
Let's welcome the writing duo of Andrews Wilson. How are you guys? How are you?
Dude,
hey, awesome.
Welcome,
good to be
boys.
here. Cheers
Thanks
to
for
you
having
guys.
us.
Thanks for having us.
I just got Tumblr.
Yeah. It's always awesome.
Hey, are they three Peters, two Peters?
At least
How many times you've been on the
if not
show?
more.
3
This
times?
is three.
Let's go back and look at the tape.
Yes.
Well, gentlemen, Dark Intercept is a heck of a, we'll say, debut because it's kind of a new series. Can you give us a glimpse of kind of what to expect in this new book coming out?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. Yeah, 3 times a charm. Maybe we'll do a good interview for you this time.
Maybe this time.
Maybe. We'll see.
So I got to tell you guys, we're excited by all the stuff we do. We love our jobs. We love what we do. We love Tier 1 and Sons of Valor. We're so excited with this new project with the Webb Griffin estate. But this book is really special for us because it's just a lot of different areas and aspects of our lives pulled into one book. So we've been talking about this book for a few years. And having the opportunity to finally bring it out is really exciting. So, what can people expect from this book? Well, first off, I think people should know they can expect Andrews and Wilson. So this is an Andrews and Wilson book. You're going to get the action, the covert ops. You're going to have a special operations protagonist. You're going to have all those things that we love to write, putting those things in a realistic setting, putting those things in a way that honors the Navy SEAL people that we used to work with. But I think that what we did here, rather than saying that we went in a new direction, what we started thinking about is we really just added a layer here, right, Brian? Like we took what we do, and instead of shifting to something new, like, oh, we're going to go write a sci-fi book, we added a different layer, which is the faith-based layer, this spiritual warfare and a guy struggling with crisis and faith. It's not a book that is preachy. It's not a book or a series that's meant to teach you something. It's still an entertaining action adventure book. But by adding that layer, we think we humanized the characters and we made it something that's relatable to everybody. Everybody has had the crisis. Everybody's had that moment where they're like, what does it all mean? Is there a God? And, how do I rectify the horrors I see in the world with my faith? And so that thread is pulled through the book, but it's pulled gently through a book, we think, that is still a fairly classic Andrews and Wilson action adventure book.
Oh, hell yeah. Well,
Yeah. And it wasn't preachy, like you said. It wasn't like trying to, you're trying to convert people. It was just an element of this guy's, life and history. So,
yeah, and we would hope that's relatable, right, Mike? I mean, that's an element. That's an element of everybody's life, no matter where you fall in that spectrum of belief, whether you are or you aren't, or you're unsure. It's still a universal question that humans ask. What do I believe? Sure. What do I think? What do I mean? Why am I here? Those sorts of things.
And you go through periods where you question it, and then you move away from your faith, and then you come back to your faith, and then maybe you move away from it again, then you come back to it stronger. And so there were tons of elements of that in the story, and I loved.
You said something smart, Chris, and I was going to compliment you, but then you muted me.
Now you just forget it.
What?
I'm sorry.
What was it you said that was smart? What was it? Because I forgot what I was going to say because I was on mute.
I don't know, that you're an awesome writer.
No. I think what you were talking about is that everybody's faith changes.
Yes.
And I think that's an important theme. Faith is not static, right? And if it is static, I'll go out on a limb and say maybe there's something wrong with you, because I think we all emotionally and intellectually grow and change as we're taking in experiences. I think when we're very young, we're quite naive, and as we get older, we get more jaded and cynical, and we see bad things, bad shit happens. We have loss, things happen to people that we care about. And so, if your faith isn't tested, if it is static, then it's probably not a very strong faith. And I think that, what's interesting about Jedediah is, all of our previous books, I think it's fair to say that, like John Dempsey and Chunk, these are some very high speed, low drag sort of guys. They have their direction charted. They know where they're going. They know where they're headed. And that's awesome because that's those guys. But with Jed, when you meet Jed, he's pretty broken. He's broken down physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and he's got a long way to go. So when you meet him, like Jeff said, he is very relatable, and he's got a long way to go.
Yeah. All the right things, because that's exactly what I was thinking. You start off with an operation with your protagonist, Jedi Johnson. He's a Navy SEAL. He's leading a team to kill, capture an HVT, high value target. Without any evidence, he senses something not right and makes a split-second decision that saves his fire team from probably certain death. That sixth sense, the feeling, the gut sensation that calls out to people, not only in the military, but in a lot of other aspects of life. Was that sensation and the drive to explore that from a spiritual side of our human existence part of the equation at the start of the series?
Yeah, we actually, here's a little bit of how the sausage is made. Interesting, we don't do this a lot, but that chapter was actually written later in the writing process, which is unusual for us. We had, as we were developing this theme of his struggle and, you know, these gifts that he thinks he has and, you know, where they originated, we realized we needed to frame it inside of his history before the book opens, you know, where he's at his retirement and he gets this urgent call. And so rather than dribbling it out through narrative over time, we thought it would be more impactful to do it that way. So, but I think that was a really fun thing to write, because anybody that's been in combat for any sustained period of time can think of a moment when they had that. And I mean, that's a real thing that for combat veterans is very relatable. We call it our warrior instinct. You call it, a lot of people call it their spidey sense, right? Like whatever it's called, there's been that inexplicable moment where this happened. And in fact, a friend of mine read, who's a Green Beret, he was one of our beta readers when we were going through the production and making sure we had everything right. And he immediately called me up and he said, dude, like I so relate to that. And he told me this amazing story about in Iraq. And he just suddenly had this moment where he's like, me and this other dude should move. We should just move. I don't know where, I don't know why, we should move. And they moved. And moments later, this mosque that they were staging out front of exploded. And the area where those two were standing,
it's unreal,
was gone, is evaporated.
That's crazy.
Like, why? How did I know that? And so that was really fun to be able to explore that and put it into, as you noted, a little bit of a supernatural is how we framed it up here, you know, biblically based supernatural stuff. But that was super fun because I think everyone can relate to that too, right? Like that. Right. Why did I do that? And yet it worked out. I did something I would never normally do. And thank goodness, because you hear the stories. I was going to be on that flight. And at the last moment, for reasons I can't explain, I just decided I'm not going to fly today. And that's the plane that crashed. And so those things were definitely, that was very, very intentional that we wanted to explore that. And we knew that from the beginning.
Wow. Ooh.
Well, you know, I've read a lot of mystery, suspense, crime, thriller, fiction over the past few years, and some's good, some's great. Usually I read them and I forget them. But with Dark Intercept, you guys weaved the story together that just sucked me in. It was the same in what I expect from a book in the genre, yet it was so different. I was entertained. The characters were fantastic. The premise had me flipping through pages. And from what I know about you guys and the books you have written together and solo, it's almost like you were destined to write this story. Is that how it felt? Did it feel like destiny to write this thing?
I think it did, because when we had written Tier 1 and Jeff and I were having this conversation, and I said to him, you know, do you feel like you've been in the presence of pure evil? I mean, have you experienced just not bad things, not just the bad things with combat? I mean, like pure evil. And he said, yeah, I think that I have. And you know the difference between them. And so that was sort of the genesis that got us started. All of our books really start with this what if question. And we sort of frame this question, you know, what if firepower is not enough to defeat the enemy? What if it takes another dimension? So that's sort of our tagline, you know, is faith and firepower enough for Jedi Johnson? And so, you know, when you start this story, you take what you were just talking about. We were just talking about that sixth sense. Jeff was talking about it, you know, and now we step it up and say, what if there is something else there? What if there's something sort of this like Jeff said, I'll go back to his metaphor of layers. You know, we talk a lot about the layers. In tier 1, the onion is a great metaphor that John Dempsey uses to think about. You know, each layer he peels back, he learns something new, you know, as he advances darker and darker into the world of covert operations. Right. With this book, that next layer that we're peeling back is this idea of spiritual warfare. And that's a layer hiding beneath the surface that most of the operations and intelligence community will never, ever see.
Right.
But I will tell you, I'll go ahead and share a story with you. You're talking about this idea of feeling destined to write this book and get this story out there. I think it just in the context of that, it's fun to share the story of how this book came to be published. You know, Brian and I, like he said, we started talking about this story and playing with this story several years ago after tier 1, shortly after tier 1 came out, which is, you know, whatever, that's like 7-8 books ago for us. So, and we even wrote, you know, 40, 50 pages and we talked about it. We, you know, when we were just socializing, we'd always talk about it. But, you know, when Sons of Valor came and then the Webb Griffin contract with Putnam came, we're busy. And so, we were not
understatement.
Right. We were not shopping this book when this deal came through. So here's the, you know, if you, whether you are a predestination person or divine intervention person or what do you believe, you guys know that other than family, faith is very important to us. And I lead this men's military ministry. So you know where I fall on this question. But we get this call, Josh Hood, good friend of ours, a friend of the show.
Yep.
Who writes the Treadstone series. I get a call from him out of the blue. He's like, dude, I got this call. You know how he is. He's like, I got to call you. I had this thing. So he's on an airplane. He's flying back from a conference and he's sitting next to a young lady and they're just having a normal social conversation. Josh also is someone whose faith is very important. And they started actually having a little faith conversation. And I think, I can't remember the context of it, but they talk about that. And then she figures out he's a writer and all of this happens. And she finally says, look, I'm with Tyndale House. And right now they are challenging us to grow our male readership and our action adventure stuff. And, you know, would you have anything like that you could share with us? And Josh being Josh said, no, I don't do that, Scott. You know, I'm to my boat kicking indoors and killing people. So
dropping F-bombs.
Right. He says, but I've got 2 friends, Jeff and Brian, who, because we had talked to him about this story socially. He said, I got 2 friends that might be interested if you want me to connect you. And so I get this call from him. He's like, I was flying with this lady. And so he tells me the whole thing. He said, do you mind if I share your contact information? And I'm honestly, I was like, yeah, you go ahead, whatever. Yeah. I don't think I'm ever hearing from anybody. Right. You know, I'm thinking this is some low level, you know, intern or whatever.
Right.
But literally, what was it, Brian? Maybe 2 or 3 days later, Gina is like, hey, Tyndale wants to talk to you. It's Karen Watson, who is she's actually the publisher for fiction for Tyndale. And they want to talk to you about this thing. So we get on this Zoom conference and, you know, they're saying, look, we want to change the direction that we do, you know, fiction. We want to start being broader in our scope. And what would you guys do with that? And we pitched the story when they loved it. We pitched our idea. You know, here's the big thing, because you guys know us. We said, look, if we're going to do this, though, this isn't going to be the Amish woman with the bonnet on the back of a wagon. Like, we're going to write what we write. Like
you could write that, though. You could write it.
I might be able to write that. I told you that in private. I know. But we told them, you know, this is what we write. We write realistic, gritty, you know, violent fiction. And they said, bring it. And so this thing literally, you know, here's the metaphor that's perfect for the conversation, fell out of the sky into our laps years after we had brainstormed it. So, you know, were we meant to write it? I don't know. Maybe so. Take from that story what you will.
We're going to have to send these guys an arc with the jazzed up Amish romance cover with the brand on it.
And if you hadn't said it, you and I could have talked offline and sent it to them and pretended we were being straight with them.
This is book 2.
Have this new
This is book 2. Tyndale didn't like the direction we were going. We had to adjust for book 2.
Yeah, but knowing you sons of bitches, I would have been like, man, this is a good book.
Yeah, no. I'd read this.
Shepherd 2, Dark Wagon.
There's more action in this Amish romance than any Amish romance I've ever read.
She's leaving bodies everywhere.
Oh my God. Well, when you started this whole process, when you were just talking about it, what was going to be? I mean, you're in thriller. There's some paranormal. There's some clairvoyance kind of things going on. What did you think might have been the actual target audience for this type of book?
We didn't think about that. We started that chapter 1. So Jeff told you that we went back and engineered that prologue. But chapter 1, where Corbin is sitting in that coffee shop with Father Macklin, and they're going to meet somebody else, and she starts having these bad feelings, and that whole thing goes down with, you know, the crash and the murder out in front of the bookstore and stuff. That was what we had. I mean, that's where we started this story. We didn't really know where it was going to go. We knew that there were going to be these elements, and we knew that we wanted to have Sarah Beth's character. And that is another layer for us. You know, all of our other novels, you know, the SEALs have families, you get to meet their kids, but they're not part of the story. But we're both fathers. We both have daughters the same age as Sarah Beth. And so for us to, you know, write about her kidnapping, that channels a lot of every father's angst. And I think when you meet David Yarnell and you see how powerless he feels, you know, the cops haven't done anything. She's past her window of time, and he's thinking, man, like, I think I'm going to lose my daughter. I am desperate. I will call anybody, you know, to help me get out of this jam. And he calls Jed. Right.
And then there's more to it than that.
The more to it than that, it's good versus evil, which is without a doubt the overarching theme of Dark Intercept. And you make clear the source of good and evil in the world in your story, God and the dark ones. But on a personal level, do you think that's true? There's no doubt, like we were talking this earlier, evil exists. But do you think people committing evil deeds are being directed by some higher being, demons, or do you think it's just the nature of man to sometimes do evil things?
I mean, it's a very common philosophical question, right? I think that it's discussed now more in these circles instead of in church, like maybe where would be appropriate place. Churches and faith-based places, they shy away from these conversations. They don't want to talk about money, and they don't want to talk about the devil, right? Because then they're going to dry up and nobody's going to come. But so do I know the answer? I don't know the answer. I will tell you this. If you study the Bible, there's certainly plenty of discussion about evil and its role in the universe, just like there is about God and good. And the idea that man with his free will has the opportunity to choose paths on one or the other is definitely a biblical thing. And it's something that is in not just Christianity, but every faith. Every faith has this element. And so, you know, from a philosophical standpoint, it's certainly common enough discussion that it should be in our fiction. And so why not? That being said, I think that, you know, we shy away from it. No one shies away from, is there a God, is there not a God, no matter where they fall on the argument. But then you say, well, what about the devil? And everyone's like, well, I don't know. I think it's unfair to talk about one without the other. Everything that you read about, whether it's in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Torah, or in the works of philosophers, they're both there. You can't have one without the other. Is there really good if there is no evil? Like, what's the alternative? And so I think we don't really feel like it's a big, heavy debate. Like, you have one, you have the other. And so fleshing those out in a fiction story, first of all, as writers, we're all writers here. what a great fun, right? Like you can just crazy creatively.
Yeah.
We tried to keep it such that we used all of the supernatural elements and these good and evil things. We tried to have scriptural references that would support it. We don't throw those out in the book,
Right.
because that's not the purpose of the book. It's an entertaining thrill ride.
Right.
But
exactly.
we want people who do have that faith to be able to say, oh, that sounds familiar, or perhaps it starts a conversation, wow, that reminds me of this message I heard. And, what do you think about this? Two guys sitting and having a beer. So me personally, I think it's hard to accept one without the other. That's sort of where I stand. But I think it's a fair conversation for anybody, wherever your faith is.
Sure.
Hey Brian, well, let me ask you, Jedediah asked a question in the story at one point, where he's thinking about it. Has God written this play long ago and he's sitting back watching it unfold, or does he take an active role in the fate of not just humanity as a whole, but as the individual? How do you think that plays out in reality?
I think about that question a lot, and I think about, let's imagine that I'm a omnipotent, all-powerful creator. I like the word creator. Let's imagine I'm a creator, and if I know how the play is going to play out, what a bore, right? I mean, especially if you're omnipotent, right? So I mean, I think what is the point? Where would that intellect be stimulated by? Just putting all the actors on the stage and letting them do their thing. So I think that the free will component is an absolute necessity. And then if you're going to give human beings free will, then I think you have to, the next logical question is to say, well, can I intervene? And how much can I intervene? Because if I don't allow them to make the choice, then how can I ascribe any value to decisions that they're making? And so I just feel like God is probably sitting up there watching all of us, with empathy in his heart, just cringing, saying, it's breaks my heart to see the bad things that are happening. And then, when he sees the rays of light, or the people that make sacrifice, the people that do the right thing, then he's proud, right? So just like we are of our kids, you can only coach your kids. You can't be there when they're on the playground or when they're young adults making decisions. You just hope that they make the good ones.
Yeah.
And if you made all the decisions for them, then that's not them living their lives.
I think that's a beautiful way to describe it, Brian. That's perfect. And here's the rub that comes out of that challenges you and makes it exciting to write the fiction. And that is this: if it was like you had two baseball teams, the good guys and the bad guys, and God is coaching one and some evil force, the Satan or whatever, is coaching the other. All right, that's pretty cut and dry, right? You can root against those people and their free will. They're the bad guys. But in the loving God model, the God is actually rooting for the good guys and the bad guys, because while he hates their coach, he really wants them, his players, on his team. And the idea for people of faith, the idea that God loves as his children the guy that does this horrible crime or ISIS or whatever. Yeah. Those are his children too. They chose a path and he gave them free will to do it. That's something I struggle with, dude. Like, that's a hard one, but it's a natural thing that comes out of what Brian was describing, right? Like he's ascribed free will. I love him. I love the way he said, he's sitting up there with a broken heart that you made this bad choice. My kids make bad choices sometimes, and I still love them, and I try to help them, and I sure hope they turn out well. And if they turn out to be serial killers, that's going to be really heartbreaking. But
it's a reflection. It's a reflection on you, Jeff.
Well, in my case, I shouldn't use me as an example, right? But,
well, as we're all fathers here, I mean, it's such a perfect analysis, because you feel the pain and the angst when your kids, especially when they're in my 16-year-old, sometimes that And I just like pray that he's going to make the right choices. And when they don't, it just kills you inside, but you still hope for the best, the next go around. So yeah, that. And I think part of your story in your book, touches on that too. So there's a lot of elements that really reach out to the readers. And this really read like a supercharged version of one of our all-time favorite television shows, Supernatural.
Yeah.
So when crafting this world and the storyline, did you guys draw any inspiration or were you influenced from any recent television or movies?
I mean, I think if you're a storyteller, we like to think of ourselves as storytellers, and we like lots of different mediums. So we watch television shows and read books, and I love audiobooks. And so we are consuming lots of different good stories. And I think, the storytellers sort of, we get things by osmosis, and you don't always remember, yes, there are those iconic scenes we love to talk about. We're writing a scene right now, and we're the climax of one of these books, and we're thinking this has certain elements of Return of the Jedi. You can't help but think of those things. Right?
Good choice.
But I can't. This is me being 100% honest. I can't say that there's one particular book or series or show that was sort of our lodestar for this. I mean, it really was us just sort of saying, okay, this is the type of story I think we want to tell. And we didn't even have a good like log line for it. It was actually Karen Watson who said, I think of this story as Taken meets Stranger Things. And Jeff and I are like, yeah, we're going to use that one. That's a good one.
Actually, that is really
trademark.
Yeah. But we've watched both of those series. So yes, maybe through osmosis, we took in little pieces and parts from those.
Dude, I love Supernatural. Right. The Winchester boys. But like the Winchester boys, you guys have written some iconic characters and stories in the genre that we all read. Like your Tier 1 series, the main protagonist in Dark Intercept, Jedi Johnson, he's a retired Navy SEAL. It's like your bread and butter.
Right.
And I wonder how much you guys stressed about making him different than, Dempsey or Chunk.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you worry about that, especially when you're writing those series, like stacking them on top of each other, back and forth. And this sounds a little bit cliche, but those characters, as we write them, really do take on a life of their own, and they become so real to us. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a lot of similarities between my 4 kids, but I don't ever get them mixed up. Right. Yeah. So I think that, and in the case of these, so let's take these 3, because, no one's been exposed yet to the exciting stuff we have in store for the Presidential Agent series, and a brand new character we created there, who's not a Navy SEAL, by the way.
Secret Service?
No,
Marine. That's not exciting.
Marine race.
Well, you're right, but you suck. But I'm talking to Mike.
If you look at Dempsey, you look at Chunk, and you look at Jedediah, they have a shared heritage of being operators, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But they are so fundamentally different in their motivation, in their personalities. And what makes that work is that, those of us that have served in the military, especially within those communities, that's right. Like, I can think of 5 guys that are radically different from a 6-man that we would roll out on, right? Not one of those guys has any similarities other than they wear a trident. And so for us, that was what we were able to do. Now, we had to be highly intentional about differentiating for the readers, right? But it became very easy. Dempsey is sort of that rather iconic sort of old school hero's journey, troubled past, and not with his family, and lost all of his teammates, singularly focused on killing the bad guys to the expense of all else, including his own happiness and health. Right. And he's awesome. I love Dempsey. In fact, we feel guilty for what we've put Dempsey through sometimes. And then you have Chunk Redmond, who was introduced in the Tier 1 series. And we needed to differentiate those characters, especially, right, because of their overlap. And in Chunk, what we talked about was, how can we take a guy whose only motivation is he's just a good old boy who loves being a SEAL, doesn't have a troubled past, never lost, his family. Yeah. He's not out for revenge. He just wakes up every morning and goes, damn, it's cool to be a SEAL.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you make that guy into a hero's journey? And so we differentiated them that way. And then in Jedediah, as Brian sort of talked about earlier, he was very different from both of them because both of them are, like he said, at the top of their game. Here we're meeting the guy at the end of his career,
right?
And a career cut short. He's still a young man,
yeah,
because he got shot and he had this injury that he just never fully recovered from. He's still functional, but he knows he's not functioning at the level he should to be leading men in combat. And so he medically retires. So like he said, he's physically broken, emotionally, spiritually broken. He's lost. He doesn't know where to go next.
Right.
In fact, the book opens with him being asked, what are you going to do next? And he's like,
I don't
know. And so that makes his motivations so different that it was easy to develop a character that was radically different from the others, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to tag on to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is that, with the other thing that separates Jed from the other two characters is Jed has this incident far in his past that he deeply regrets and that he has run away from. And I think that all of us look at our lives and we think, God, I wish I could have done that over.
Yeah.
I wish if I was in that situation, I would have done it differently. Or I wish I could just take back that one thing that I said. Or, you have these gnawing things. Where would I be if I had done it differently, said something differently, had the courage or whatever to handle the situation differently? And that's Jed. And so we don't tell you what that thing is. And that thing is complicated. And we actually sort of twist the knife in a little bit deeper for Jed by making it so that David ended up with the life and going down the path that Jed had seen for himself. So when Jed ran away from his problem, somebody stepped in to fill the void. And that makes it all the more cringeworthy for the guy.
It's painful, isn't it?
Oh, all those scenes, there was a part of me that was just kind of like, oh, I would not want to be in his shoes.
It's so painful. Yeah. It was
painful and then the girl looks just like Rachel. Like he's like, oh, it's like this is like,
he can't even say her name in the beginning.
Yeah, I know.
Remember?
Right. I found myself like thinking that I'd be the same as Jed is about this whole thing. Like you really feel like you feel his pain. You guys did a great job.
And he steps up though. He does.
Yeah.
But yeah, then the fun part, right? Like that's what you want your hero to be. He doesn't have to be perfect. He doesn't have to be a superhero, but he just is driven by a moral compass. And that's the heroes we've always tried to build, right? So in him, here's this guy that is so angry and so bitter. And there's sometimes you're like, I don't think he's going to keep going. He's just so pissed off. I can't see him keeping going.
Yeah.
He doesn't want the job.
He doesn't want to do it, but he can't not do the right thing because it's who he is. Yeah. And it makes you bleed for him even more, right? You're like, dude, walk away. It'll be much easier.
I felt
and then on top of that, we sort of throw this other little wrinkle in there that he thinks he's starting to go crazy.
Yeah. Which I would too.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Shell shocked a little bit.
It was such a masterful creation. It was great.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it, Mike.
So you're writing 3 different series now.
It's crazy.
I mean, my goodness. And I don't remember if we've really asked you in the past.
Technically, it's 4. I don't mean to.
Dude, I have trouble writing a short story in a month. You guys are like ridiculous.
200 words today. Do you guys? What are you guys doing these days to disengage from one storyline to the other? Because the characters are similar but very different, and you've got to capture that time and again. Your readers are going to know when they're reading Chunk, when they're reading about Jed. It's going to be. So, what are you guys doing together and or individually that you're stepping away from one to go work on the other and getting that correct, not getting them bleeding over to each other?
I think, Jeff made this point earlier, and I want to hammer it home because we're lucky that we both have this same weird psychological phenomenon, which is simply that these characters feel like people to us. So just like he said, I couldn't confuse my kids. I couldn't confuse my friends from high school. I remember my friends from high school. It's been years since I've seen them, but I know their personalities. So, when we're writing junk, like he's just not going to act like Dempsey, you know.
Yeah.
He's a different dude. And I feel that energy when I'm writing in that point of view, and I know that Jeff does too. Now, that's the psychological part. There is the craft component, and I don't want to downplay that for all those, you know, authors and writers that are listening, which is the craft component is you need to map out who these people are. I mean, you can't just, if you just start a character without discussing it, we're co-authors, so we discuss it in depth. But if you're writing by yourself, if you don't create a character sketch, I think just our brain will naturally sort of gravitate towards that default persona that we all tend to write.
Yeah.
Or me, right? Like,
yeah.
Brian talked about this on another interview. We don't usually do anything.
What? You did another interview?
Yeah, we usually say no. We only do crew reviews, but every now and then we have to because the publicist sets it up. But he made that point about how if you don't allow the character to become real for you, then it's just human nature that you're going to, his response in every situation is going to kind of be what you would do, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have like this cast of 6 characters and they're all you.
Yeah.
and you feel that. You're like, you've read that book, right? And it's not that it's not a good book, but it's story driven, plot driven or whatever, but it's sure as hell not character driven because the characters just feel two dimensional when the author falls into that trap of, and here's what he would do, because that's what I would do, right?
Right.
And so I think that's good advice that Brian is giving here about for writers and up and coming writers is you really need to make them real for yourself. Now, if you've got the psychiatric disorder we have and they whisper in your ear at night, that's awesome. If not, then you really do need to be highly intentional of thinking and even sketching out it on the page, in your notebook. Here's what they're like. Here's their background. Here's what motivates them. Here's what, they're quick to anger, even though you're not, whatever it is, you've got to have some of those bullets for yourself.
Yeah. And which was, I was worried about because you're writing so many daggone books a year. Like you don't have a lot of time. So
we don't get to take 3 months between projects.
3 minutes.
And so it's not really a struggle for the character. And I get why people ask us that all the time because it seems like it should be,
right?
And it isn't. I don't know why, but it just isn't. But there is that logistical issue because in order for that to work, that idea of the character informing the story, you got to be, and again, it sounds kind of goofy, but you got to be in the story. You've got to really get into that story. And you guys are writers, so you know exactly.
Yeah.
You got to be there. And that's hard when logistically, if we were just having to write a book every 3 or 4 months, and then move on to the next book, it would be challenging enough. But what happens is in the middle of that work in progress, the line copy edits come in from Putnam. And then one of us has to peel off and address that while the other guy tries to move the ball down the field in that story. And then you come back in and you're starting to write your chapters. But, oh, guess what? Tyndale needs the developmental edit started on book 2 because it's coming out in April. And so that is.
Wait a minute.
That becomes a logistical challenge, and you need those couple of days to get back into the story, and you're constantly in and out. It can be a little bit. I don't want to. We're not looking for sympathy. We are so blessed. I am so happy to be doing what I'm doing it with my best friend. So please don't take this wrong. But it can be exhausting to go in and out of stories like that, just emotionally exhausting to try to get.
And we want to keep the level, the quality of the product that we're delivering to our fans, and to the readers at the highest level. We want you to pick up an Andrews and Wilson book and be like, damn, this is a good book. This is Andrews and Wilson book.
Yeah.
And, I think to do that, we need to have enough time to do all the phases of product development,
for sure,
telling that story and stuff. So this summer has been a challenge for both of us we're working on book 3 in The Shepherds. And this book has been just a challenge because there's been so many interruptions from the promotion publicity cycle for Sons of Power and COVID and the kids going back to school. and you know, just all that's, you know, bringing out, launching Dark Intercept and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Taking a shower. I don't know.
Taking a shower. Yeah.
Jeff.
Getting out of my chair.
Understood. Message received.
Right? Do you guys have legs? Do they fall asleep? I mean, what the hell. But hey, seriously, Dark Intercept had a satisfying ending, but damn, you guys had me eager for the next story.
I know.
I heard you say it was going to be April. So when you guys pitched this idea to Tyndall, did you already know, like, well, obviously you knew the universe, but did you know where the story arcs were going to go, like 3-4 books out? Or you're like, well, if we ever sell it, we'll just figure it out?
I don't know that it was quite as cavalier as that, but so no, I think the way you described it is actually exactly right. We had the universe mapped out. So, you know, you understand, you guys have read the book, so you know, the first book is a huge prologue to the series, right? Like you don't really find out, it's called the Shepherd series, but you don't even know what that means.
Right.
So like the end.
The end of the book, like Act 3. And so we definitely had mapped out sort of a vague what this universe and how Jed will become part of the Shepherds and where that goes and all that. We had that mapped out, but in terms of the stories, we didn't even have the end of this, one really mapped out when we pitched it. But we did have an idea for the universe. And I will say, you know, you mentioned it's coming out in April. I know I mentioned that too. And that's, God bless Tyndale House. We believe when you launch a new series, you got to get the first couple of books out pretty quickly.
For sure.
So that the readers can really get into the story and decide whether this is a ride they want to go on.
Right.
And so you asked whether we got support for Tyndale. We got tremendous support. We got this hardcover release. We've got marketing. They have been fantastic. But one of the things they did in our early discussion was we talked about release dates. And we felt, like we just said, that the first 3 books should come out closely. And they do. The first 3 books in this series will come out over 13 months. So we have the first book coming out now, then the next book comes out in April, and then the final book comes out in the fall of next year. And I think that's really important to the.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge for your reader base, but dude, what a strain considering everything else you have going on. But you know,
it's a lot. It's a little bit of work, but
it's a good problem, right?
It's a good problem to have for sure.
That is awesome.
One thing that's cool about book 2 is that when we started mapping it out, we said, you know what? Because like Jeff said, book 1, if you look at it as a prologue, you could almost say that book 2, we get to do some origin story stuff that we would normally do in book 1.
Yeah.
And so book 2 is badass. There's all kinds of cool stuff with the Shepherds organization, and we cannot spoil it, but just the first.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Nobody watches this.
Shit out of it.
When Jed shows up,
we'll
all
stop
I'm gonna say,
and just tell me. No, I'm kidding.
All I'm gonna say is when Jed shows up for his first day of work, he's like, WTF.
Dude, listen, so no spoilers, but at the end you give a smidgen of the history, and that so piqued my interest. I was like, and you know, and piqued Jed's, he's like, wait a minute. He's like, what?
And Ben knows, right? He's like, he gave him just enough to where he couldn't say no, because I have to say yes so that I can find out more, right?
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, and you do get to learn a lot of that in book 2. Book 2 is called Dark Angel, and it's a lot of good Andrews and Wilson action. We get to go overseas a little bit. We get to see how some of these things affect geopolitics. It was really fun, man.
Well, yeah, the way you ended it, it totally set it up, because you know there's certain characters, whatever. I don't want to say anything, but and you're just like, dude, how's that the last page? The acknowledgments are next, you sons of like.
Well, at least we give it to you in April, so you don't have to wait. Like
I know.
So then you fun that you guys have read the book, because we can talk about sometimes you do an interview and they haven't read it. So, you know, it's not, this is really fun. You guys have read it. So
you wouldn't be on the show if we didn't read it. You'd be like, all right, you guys can come on in December. when we read it.
Well, that's why the best podcasts for writers are with other writers, right?
Yeah.
No writer would interview a writer having not read the book, but you'd be surprised, or maybe not, how many other people would do that.
Somewhat of a fraud.
Yeah. Well, you guys survived once again the main portion of the interview.
Cheers.
And as you know,
the awkward lightning round.
We're now going to work on ruining your careers, or at least taking some hits here.
All right.
And maybe we should warn the Tyndall folks to turn off right now.
Hey, Brian, what's that watch?
You're killing us, Chris.
Brian, show me that watch you're wearing.
Oh yeah, dude, what is that?
This is a watch. This is a Declan James timepiece. And we heard about this company. It's founded by a dude named Brian Doherty, and he's a Navy SEAL. Oh, cool. And as you know, we very much part of our platform is just trying to connect with other veterans and help cross promote, because it's so damn hard to start a business today and get your brand out there and stuff.
Right.
And this guy is he makes an amazing project. He's so passionate about watches, and it's good looking.
Yeah, yeah.
Where does he have a website? Like, where can you?
Yeah, Declan James, Declan. Our wives both bought us watches to celebrate the release of Sons of Valor because we've been talking to this guy. They're beautiful luxury timepieces. Well, I'll tell you what I love about it. You think that the Navy SEAL who starts a watch company is going to make these watches, right?
Yeah.
He's going to make the tactical high-speed watch. And I actually, when I first met Brian, I said, I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised. Like, you could have this in with DOD and all that. He goes, oh, that's not what this is about. I've been in love with watches since I was 7, and I just love a luxury timepiece. And I was like, he's so passionate about it. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Great product. So,
all right, folks, go check out his website. Give it a look.
What's the website again? What is it?
It's Declan James, Declan James. If you search that, it'll pop right up.
Awesome.
Nice. All right, Declan. Let's sell some watches, baby. All right. Here comes the lightning round.
All right.
Jeff.
Yeah.
What was the last unspoken message Brian sent to you through the atmosphere?
Why aren't you writing?
Tired of carrying the team.
This comes with a spiritual slap too.
I don't care what you just texted me. I know you're not writing.
Dude, look at his beard.
Hey, listen, I will say this, all kidding aside, he has not sent me any DMs through some sort of weird spiritual Snapchat, but we do feel, after writing so long together, that there is this one mind.
Probably.
I can't count on all of my appendages how many times I call him up and I said, hey, I got to tell you something. He's like, wait. I had this idea. And he tells me exactly what I was just thinking. It happens.
That is bizarre.
It's gross. And it happens all the time.
That's awesome. Well,
Stop looking at me naked. That's weird.
Yeah, well. Close your drapes.
Don't like it.
Told you. Tyndall folks, turn off.
Number 2. Do either of you think that your wives would have dated you if they had the ability to read your thoughts?
I'm such a pure soul.
And that's it. Nice talking
next, to you. Jeff.
When I first met Wendy, who truly is the love of my life, I mean, she's put up with a lot, with this career, but with the previous more so. When I first met Wendy, I had been in the desert of Iraq 48 hours earlier. Jeez. So I don't think that she needed ESP to know what I was thinking. and somehow we still ended up together. Now, there was a long 6 months before we went on our first date, but I'm pretty sure she already knew what I was thinking.
I met my wife on a blind date, and I remember she was walking down this staircase in this silver dress, and I ogled the shit out of her. She somehow stayed with me.
Dude, that's awesome.
We both married up. We're so
all
beyond
4 of us married
our
way
station.
Way up.
Way to go, fellas.
All right. Okay, last question. Brian,
Yeah.
Now that you both are publishing multiple books a year, and you just appeared on the cover of the Big Thrill magazine, folks. Check that out.
Our first cover.
You guys look pretty good.
It was pretty sharp.
A lot of airbrushing, but hey.
That's right. So how has fame and fortune changed Jeff?
And Jeff hasn't changed at all. He's the same dude. And that, I think, is because either he's insane, he's such a pathological narcissist that he already was like this, or that's option one, or option two is that he's very good at policing his ego. And I think that option two is probably true. And it's the same for me. When we started this venture together, we said, we're going to take our ego out of the equation, because if we don't, we can't be squabbling about who gets to say what and who wrote what and who gets to be on this show or whatever. It's about us as a team.
Right.
And that is our ethos. And I can't tell you, it takes a lot of weight off my back personally to know that I can trust him to go out there and represent us, and he'll never let me down. He's never let me down so far.
Right.
And like he said, he's my best friend. So yeah, he hasn't changed, only for the better.
But the books are Andrews and Wilson.
Yeah, that's a big part of the stability of this relationship.
Brian told me it was alphabetical.
I don't know. Well, wasn't it Reagan or somebody like that said, imagine what can be done if no one's working to try and take the credit?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, it's a great way to do your business, boys. All right, I'm done with my stuff.
All right, Tyndall, you guys can turn back on, because my first couple questions are going to be religious in nature.
All right.
Brian, which story in the New Testament is your favorite?
Well, I think my favorite is I like when Jesus says, thou without sin cast the first stone. I think there is a lot of stone throwing going on right now, especially in the United States of America. A lot of people who claim they're pious, and at the same time, they're the biggest mudslingers of them all. So, I don't remember who said it, but I think about it a lot. Like, if Jesus came back today, who are the people that would embrace him, and who are the people that would throw rocks at him and drag him into the mud?
Right.
So that I think about that a lot when I start to judge people. So that, for me, that's resonated with me for 2 decades, that story, and it always stays with me. When I start to judge and when I look at the behavior of others, if we could all remember that story, I think the world would be a much better place.
Just real quick, you mentioned if Jesus had come back like today, do you know, so when I was in the Secret Service, we would get the crazy calls, the people who were stuck in these, like, the insane asylum, basically, for lack of a better word, who thought they were Jesus. And there was 3 of them that would call the duty agent, like, they memorized the phone number, and they would have telephone privileges, and they would call like, it's Jesus. I'm like, Jesus? Like, is it really you, or are you just the crazy guy? No, it's Jesus. I'm like, oh my God.
What's the code word?
It's not how I thought he'd return.
No. 350 pounds.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff. So speaking of Jesus, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with him, and you got to ask him one question, what would it be?
So it's a weird question, because my faith is so big for me that I feel like I can ask him now. And I take questions to him quite a bit. But if I could go back to the historical, God incarnate as man, I think that the thing I would ask him would probably be related to, why do you surround yourself with people like us, right? Like, so when I look at, I don't know if anyone's watching this new show that's on TV. It's a streaming service called The Chosen.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
My favorite. I cried during it.
It's phenomenal. And the reason it's phenomenal is because they completely humanize these characters, right? Like they argue. They don't like Matthew because he seems he might be on the spectrum a little bit, and he's so annoying. And you know, Peter's kind of this arrogant ass, and like
he is.
And I think that is what the best part of the Christ story to me is how he surrounded himself with these people. And I mean, I get the theological reason. Like, I get the theological reason that he's not going to come just for these people. It's for everybody. But why those dudes? Like some of these, like Peter, he's my favorite disciple. I relate to him because he's so flawed. But it seems like he could have found a middle ground, right? He could have found guys who weren't fighting with each other all the time and arguing about who gets to be the best. And I think my favorite scriptures, like where it's actually written in the Bible, where Jesus gets pissed off and he's like, dude, how long do I have to put up with you guys? Do you remember that? Like, that's in the NIV version. Like, how long do I have to tolerate you guys? Yeah. And so I would have to ask him something like that. Like, why these guys? Like,
that's awesome.
And seriously, folks, if you haven't watched The Chosen, go to the App Store on Google or iOS and download it and watch season 1, season 2. Dallas, who's the director, he writes. I think he writes the scripts for him too.
He's incredible, Dallas Jenkins.
He is. You want to talk about? You know, we interview the greatest storytellers. I would love to interview him because his storytelling ability is bar none. Like he puts the visuals, the dialogue, the music, the setting, everything. It hits you. It hit me. I mean, I tell everybody about that. The Chosen.
We watch it all together. It's a great show. It's just so human. So human.
Yeah, my 11-year-old is like, "Hey, Dad, when's the next episode coming out?" And the cool thing about that, not going off on tangent here, is it's crowdsourced.
Yeah, that's right.
And you could pay it forward. Yeah, it's crowdsourced.
I didn't know that.
And they've had I can't remember the number. Wow. It's like 128 million views now.
It's ridiculous.
What? Oh, jeez.
And you can actually watch season 1 on YouTube if you wanted to as well.
You can. And season 2, all you got to do is download the app on your phone and
stream it to your
TV. It's incredible.
Wow. It's phenomenal.
But how does that help sell copies of Dark Intercept?
I don't know. Doesn't. But you had me. You mentioned it. So I'm talking about it. All right. So let's go back to Dark Intercept then. Okay. Between me, Mike, and Sean, who's not here, he's doing something apparently that's more important than speaking to you guys. Which of us would be a shepherd team leader? Which would be a tactical spiritual leader? And which would be the watcher?
Oh.
Well, the watchers are children.
I got it figured out.
The watchers are children, so that's got to be Chris.
Is the baby.
What do you got, Brian? I want to hear your answer.
I was going to say that Mike would be the spiritual leader, that Chris would be the operator, and that Sean is the child.
There might be truth in that too.
I'm okay with that one.
Anybody that's watched this show with any regularity would have to say they're all children, they're all watchers. You're going to have to bring in
100%.
You're going to have to bring in some more people.
So true.
Definitely not the spiritual leader.
Hey guys, it was great having you on again. We love this book so much. We've been talking about it for the last 2 days.
Yeah, no joke.
It's got a lot of uniqueness, but it's got a lot of familiar type story plot and from a thriller standpoint, but there's so much uniqueness to it, and it's so well written, which we expect from you guys every time now, that you can't help but page 1 you're sucked in. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to read till 11:30, and next thing I know it's 1:20, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go. That's what.
So Mike said that. Mike was like, hey, he goes, dude, I'm like 2 chapters in. He sends, we message it to each other. He's like 2 chapters sucked in. I'm like, dude, I haven't even started yet. And so like I had that anticipation, and I was like, dude, you're so right. What page are you on? And I'm like, I finished the book already.
Ultimate compliment, guys.
This is
one of my favorite books. One of my favorite reads this year.
Yep,
no joke.
Sure.
Loved
Beautifully written. It's a great story. It's not preachy, but it touches on all the key elements that are in our lives. And I'm glad this is out here, and I can't wait to see the next one. Please,
seriously,
please come on quick.
Yeah.
We'll get you an arc.
Oh, Wonderful.
Thanks for coming on, boys.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
everything,
Cheers.
gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Salud. Hey, for the very first time in 3 years, 2 years plus we've been doing this,
Yes.
we're going to do this as a duo.
Duo. The fantastic
call
duo.
out. Yeah. Because why? We had the duo authors of Andrew and Wilson on today and Dark Intercept, the Shepherd series. Folks, Chris and I cannot say enough how awesome this book is. It's so unique, but it's also familiar to all of our fans. Guys, please go out and get this copy. You will not be disappointed. I promise you that. And there's more to come that we can't even talk about.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
for now, let's do a toast to Andrews and Wilson and all their success. They've earned
Cheers,
it.
boys.
And here's to Sean, who can't be with us tonight. We'll take a double drink just for you, my friend.
Love you, buddy.
Love you.
Cheers.
Weird. Oh, that hurts. Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. Brian is not actually on his audio.
You guys muted me. Somebody. The host muted me.
Jeff,
What
you
I was
guys-
gonna
How did you
say-
mute?
Hey, Brian, it's me. They've given me control.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Damn
He's a
it.
puppet.
I will
He's a
let you
puppet.
know when you can speak.
Never give Jeff control. This is what happens.
I forgot.
Good versus evil here.